but she rejected him. She said, "Let's end this here. This $1 million is compensation for the 3 years you've spent with me. This villa is yours too." David gripped her chin, demanding she divorce her husband, but she refused and gave him a farewell kiss. At the airport, Alice reunited with her husband Bruce Miller, whom she hadn't seen in 3 years. Rose was clinging to Bruce's arm. Alice asked Rose if she was truly pregnant. Rose apologized but insisted she wanted to give birth to Bruce's child. Alice recalled their wedding day 3 years ago when she slapped Rose for seducing Bruce into bed. However, Bruce slapped Alice back harshly, calling her cheap and disgusting. He reached out to Rose and led her away. Rose turned back and smiled at Alice, knowing she had won. 3 years later, Bruce still deeply despised Alice, even insulting her as the daughter of a murderer. Furious, Alice slapped him. Rose pretended that Alice had pushed her to the ground. Bruce berated Alice for being vicious and raised his hand to punish her, but his grandfather stopped him. His grandfather forbade Bruce from divorcing Alice, warning that if he dared to divorce her, he would not inherit a single cent of the family fortune. Alice and Bruce received an invitation from the Smith family for the grandmother's birthday banquet the next day. Bruce's grandfather told them this was a great opportunity. The Miller family business had been declining over the years, and their only hope was to secure the Smith family's new resort project. At the banquet, they must find a way to persuade David Smith, the president of the Smith family. David called Alice, but she refused to meet him, lying that she had to stay home with her husband. David was jealous and ordered her not to sleep with her husband. She hung up and lay alone in bed. 3 years ago, after Bruce went abroad with Rose, Alice got drunk and ran into David at a nightclub, even vomiting on him. She was instantly attracted to the handsome David, holding him and caressing his face. She told him with a smile, "Stop being a male escort. Let me keep you." Amused, he grabbed her chin and asked, "Do you know who I am?" She didn't answer, instead pulling on his collar and kissing him on tiptoe. He was shocked that he didn't have an allergic reaction since he had a rare condition where any physical contact with others would trigger allergies. He lifted Alice onto his shoulder, and they ended up spending the night together. David's assistant uncovered the truth about Alice and her husband Bruce. Alice and Rose used to be close friends, but Rose betrayed Alice by becoming the true heiress of the Brown family and even stole Alice's fiancé, Bruce. David was furious and speechless, realizing that Alice had abandoned him for such a scumbag husband. The next day, Rose accompanied Bruce to the birthday banquet, and Alice also attended in an elegant gown. Rose presented a gift to Mrs. Smith, claiming she was representing the Miller family. However, Alice also handed over a gift, stating that she was representing the Miller family too. The guests began whispering, curious about who Bruce's real wife was. Rose said, "My gift is an exclusive designer item worth $1 million. Alice, on the other hand, said she had personally made incense for Mrs. Smith. Rose mocked her for giving a cheap gift, but Alice calmly replied, "I heard Mrs. Smith has been struggling with insomnia. This incense can help her sleep better." Mrs. Smith accepted the gift and praised Alice for her thoughtfulness. Rose was ridiculed by the guests and became furious. She walked up to Alice and deliberately insulted her. "Just like your murderer mother, you will never meet a good end." Alice slapped her hard across the face. Bruce called Alice crazy and ordered her to apologize to Rose. When Alice refused, he slapped her in return. At that moment, David called Alice. Bruce snatched her phone and demanded to know who the man was. Alice replied coldly, "He's a man 10,000 times better than you." "So what?" Bruce answered the call, angrily scolding the man on the other end. But suddenly, the man's voice echoed throughout the banquet hall. CEO David Smith entered the banquet hall escorted by bodyguards, holding his phone, and said coldly, "You bastard, are you trying to provoke me?" Alice and Bruce were both stunned. Bruce quickly apologized to David and begged him to let the Miller family handle the resort project. But David flatly refused. When Rose tried to speak up for Bruce, David dismissed her, saying she had no right to criticize him. Then, David scolded Bruce for bringing his mistress to the banquet, calling it disgraceful. In a fit of anger, Bruce slapped Rose and told her to shut up. Desperate, Bruce asked David for a reason behind his rejection. David replied, "That's something you should ask your wife." Bruce turned to Alice and questioned how she had offended David. Alice lied, saying, 3 years ago, I accidentally scratched David's car while driving." I left $200 as compensation and left. She picked up a glass of red wine and apologized to David, but he coldly replied, "One glass of wine isn't enough to make up for the past 3 years." In response, Alice grabbed the entire bottle of wine and said she was willing to drink it all to apologize. David smirked and said, "You're really a good wife who thinks for her husband." Alice then drank the entire bottle in one go. The guests mocked Bruce as a coward for making his wife apologize on his behalf. Feeling sorry for Alice, David declared that the matter would end there and he would let it go. Enraged, Rose splashed a glass of water in Alice's face. Unexpectedly, David's grandmother handed Alice a towel and took her upstairs to change clothes. While Alice was changing, David happened to walk into the room. He said, "This is my room. What are you doing here?" Alice replied that his grandmother had brought her here to change clothes. David sat on the bed, pulled Alice onto his lap, and kissed her passionately. At that moment, Bruce called. As Alice answered the phone, David hugged and kissed. "Be with me." Alice lied, claiming she loved Bruce because they were childhood sweethearts. She knew that David was a powerful man she couldn't afford to offend, so she wanted to end things with him as soon as possible. David was both heartbroken and furious, believing Alice was merely using him as a tool to get back at Bruce. Bruce's grandfather told him and Alice that David had invited hundreds of companies to bid for the resort project, but the Miller family was the only one excluded. Bruce blamed Alice for offending David, which led to their exclusion. Alice assured his grandfather that she would find a way to help the Miller family secure a chance to bid. At work, Alice ran into Rose, who turned out to be her new colleague and attempted to steal her work resources and opportunities. Their supervisor decided to let them compete fairly. Whoever could successfully interview the billionaire David would become the primetime host. The next day, both Alice and Rose visited David. Rose lied, claiming to be Bruce's wife, and Bruce put his arm around her shoulder, confirming her claim. The security guard suspected Alice of being an imposter and demanded she leave immediately. However, David wrapped his arm around her waist and said, "She is my girlfriend." Bruce was jealous and angry. He shook off Rose's hand and left with an excuse. Alice proposed to David that if she won the golf match, he must agree to an exclusive interview. But when she won, David went back on his word, saying, "Breaking promises? I learned that from you." A few days later, the supervisor informed them that David had agreed to the interview. Rose thought she had won the opportunity and was so thrilled that she decided to treat her colleagues to a dinner. To get back at her, Alice deliberately ordered a lot of expensive dishes, and Rose was stunned when the bill came to $150,000. She called Bruce for help. When he arrived, he scolded Alice and brought up her past, mentioning how she had given her virginity to another man in college. He accused her of being promiscuous and claimed she wanted to marry him not out of love, but for his wealth. Furious, Alice slapped him, finally realizing the reason behind Bruce's change in attitude. She wanted to break up with him, but he grabbed her arm, demanding to know who her lover was. David suddenly appeared, wrapped his arm around Alice's waist, and said, "Her lover is me." He was about to take her away, but Bruce yelled, "Are you really going to leave me? I'll give you one last chance. You can come back to me." David grabbed Alice's chin and asked her to choose. Smiling, she held David's hand, turned to Bruce, and said, "Our relationship ends here." Then she left with David, but Bruce couldn't accept the reality. David pushed Alice onto the bed and removed his tie. He told her he had been waiting for her call ever since the golf match, but it never came. He revealed that he had already sent an invitation to the Miller family for the bidding, so he hoped she wouldn't stay mad at him. She told him, "There's no way for us to be together." She believed David was too powerful and didn't want to be completely controlled by him. Such a relationship felt too dangerous. David was a bit upset, but she suddenly hugged him, thanking him for standing up for her today. David replied, "Then give me a chance. Even if not as your boyfriend, at least let me be your date." The next day, when David was about to be interviewed by the TV station, he saw that the host was Rose. He said, "The host I agreed to meet isn't you, it's Alice. I lost a golf match to Alice, so I promised her the interview." Rose was reprimanded by her boss, The supervisor begged Alice to conduct the interview and asked Rose apologize to her. Reluctantly, Rose said sorry. Alice stood up, took Rose to the meeting room, and asked, "Back in college, did you tell Bruce about that night?" Rose admitted it and even knelt, pleading for Alice's forgiveness. Alice didn't forgive her because she suspected Rose had something to do with that incident in college as well. Alice went to David's company to conduct the interview. During the session, David openly admitted that he had someone he liked, a remarkable woman with many admirers. After the interview, Alice shook his hand and was about to leave, but he held onto her hand and said, "Using me and then running away? How are you going to thank me?" David leaned in to kiss her, but she refused. He wrapped his arm around her waist and invited her to his house that night. She agreed. Outside David's company, Rose stopped him, claiming she had a secret about Alice to share. Then she told him that Alice had been promiscuous in college and had a one-night stand. But David told her, "I don't care how many men Alice has dated in the past. In my heart, she is the most precious and pure woman. If you slander her again, I'll cut out your tongue." That evening, David hugged Alice tightly in bed, acting coquettishly in her arms. He told her that Rose had come to him earlier and brought up what happened to her in college. Alice was upset, thinking David was looking down on her. He tried to explain, but she wouldn't listen and walked out immediately. The next day, the bidding meeting for the resort project began. Alice met her foster parents there. They accused her of clinging to Bruce and hindering his relationship with Rose. However, Alice ignored them. Soon after, David announced that the Miller family had won the resort project bid, which surprised Alice. He waited for her in the corridor, then wrapped his arm around her waist to calm her down. He invited her to dinner at his villa that evening, where he would cook for her. She smiled and nodded, made a pinky promise with him, and he took the opportunity to kiss her. After saying goodbye to David, Alice ran into Rose. Rose pretended to be pushed down by Alice to frame her. She cried to Bruce, "Alice pushed me down, trying to make me Miss Scary." Everyone began to criticize Alice, calling her malicious, and even started gossiping about her background. They said Alice's biological mother was a murderer. Alice's father demanded that she apologize to Rose, but Alice refused. She slowly descended the stairs, reminiscing about how she had once been doted on by her parents. But one day, Rose showed up with a paternity test and claimed to be the real daughter of the Brown family. Her mother slapped Alice across the face. Alice publicly declared that she would sever ties with her father from then on, cutting off a lock of her hair as a symbol of her resolve. She knelt before her father, giving him 3 kowtows to express her gratitude for his and her mother's years of upbringing. As she turned to leave, she saw David. Rose complained to David that Alice had pushed her down the stairs. But David reached out to Alice, helping her back up the stairs to stand beside him. He asked Rose, "Can you swear that Alice really pushed you?" Rose, thinking there were no cameras, loudly replied, "I swear she pushed me. If I'm lying, our family will go bankrupt and I'll live a miserable life." David then told everyone, to ensure the bidding meeting went smoothly, "I had already installed a high-tech surveillance system here that tracks everyone's every move." He played the conversation between Alice and Rose, and Rose's scheme was completely exposed. The guests all cursed Rose for being a heartless liar. Her father was so embarrassed that he slapped her. Rose tried to argue, but her father slapped her again, ordering her to apologize to her sister Alice. Rose sought help from Bruce, but he shook off her hand and apologized to Alice. Alice told them, "First, I have severed ties with the Brown family, so I am no longer Rose's sister. Second, I do not accept your apology, and I reserve the right to pursue this matter further." At home, Rose suggested that Bruce divorce Alice and told him Alice had already signed the divorce agreement. She handed Bruce the agreement, and he recognized Alice's handwriting. Bruce recalled how Rose had secretly shown him Alice's diary in college. He had seen Alice describe having relations with other men and mocking him for being stupid. He suspected that Rose had forged Alice's handwriting, so the diary might have been a fake. He grabbed Rose by the neck and threw her onto the couch. He told her that Alice had moved out of his house long ago, and they had never been officially married, only in a nominal relationship. Therefore, Alice couldn't have signed the divorce agreement. Rose clung to him from behind, begging for forgiveness, but he released her and walked away without looking back. Bruce went to Alice's house, intending to reconcile, but saw her dancing with David by the window. David said to Alice, "Be my girlfriend." She agreed, and he kissed her hand, then kissed her lips. Outside the window, Bruce cried, knowing that he had completely lost Alice. He returned home, ordering Rose to abort the child. He promised her financial compensation and a 5-year contract with her TV station. The next day, Rose announced that she had secured a major contract worth tens of millions of dollars for the TV station. The director appointed Alice and Rose as hosts for the primetime slot, and they would compete fairly, with the audience voting for their favorite host. David told Alice that although her votes were currently ahead, the malicious Rose would likely tamper with the results. He took the opportunity to flirt with Alice, "You could bribe me, and I'll make sure your votes stay ahead." He leaned in to ask for a kiss, but she suddenly pushed him down on the couch, saying, "I can handle this myself. No need for you to interfere." Afterward, rumors about Alice's mother killing her husband spread online. The director told Alice that public opinion was turning against her, so they decided to suspend her for a week. Alice angrily returned home and sat on David's lap, hugging him for comfort. He lifted her up, made her stand on the sofa, and told her that he had found out who was spreading the rumors. Alice looked at the photo and realized that the culprit was her former colleague, Vivian. Vivian had always disliked Alice and had been antagonizing her. Later, David took off his glasses and kissed Alice before carrying her to the bedroom. Alice met Vivian at a cafe. When Vivian saw her, she boasted about landing a new job as the editor-in-chief of a famous magazine. Alice exposed her as the one spreading the rumors and demanded she reveal who had provided her with the information. Vivian refused. Alice called David for help, and soon Vivian received a call from her boss, informing her she had been fired. Alice told her that now all the magazines had blacklisted her, and she would never find another job. Vivian made several calls and confirmed Alice was telling the truth. She had indeed been blackballed in the industry. Alice left the cafe, but Vivian blocked her, asking how she had so much power. David rolled down the car window and told Vivian, "Do you now realize who you've offended?" He got out of the car and embraced Alice. Vivian was terrified and admitted that Rose had given her the information to spread the rumors. Vivian went to the TV station, slapped Rose, and accused her of being manipulative, using her to take revenge on Alice. Alice told Rose, "I treated you like my best friend in high school. When you were bullied, I protected you. When you were harassed, I took the knife for you. But you repay me by stealing my fiancé and spreading lies about me online." Bruce's grandfather arrived at the TV station, scolding Rose and declaring that Alice was like his own granddaughter, so he wouldn't allow anyone to bully her. He ordered the director to immediately fire Rose, or he would cancel the cooperation with the station. He didn't oppose Alice being with David, and even invited them to dinner at his house. Rose was furious. She picked up a brick and tried to ambush Alice, but Alice noticed her in time. David uncovered the truth about the murder case. Alice's mother had killed her husband to protect Rose, but Rose had pretended not to be there and refused to testify. He showed a video of Rose running away from the crime scene and ordered her to go to court and appeal to clear her foster mother's name. In the evening, Alice and her boyfriend went to Bruce's grandfather's house for dinner. The grandfather warmly hosted them. Just then, Bruce came home and overheard his grandfather entrusting Alice to David. He became very jealous and shouted, "I disagree." Alice held David's hand and told Bruce, "I'm willingly with him." To provoke Bruce, David intentionally kissed her forehead in front of him. Bruce grabbed Alice's hand, begging her not to leave, but she shook off his hand and warned him, "If you touch me again, I'll ruin you." David was pleased and admired her decisiveness. The next day, Rose tried to reconcile with Bruce, but he pushed her to the ground. To take revenge on Alice, Rose called her and said, "Do you want to know who you slept with that night in college? Come to meet me." But when Alice arrived at the designated location, Rose had her kidnapped. David and Bruce both discovered that Alice was missing. The location of her car was traced to the outskirts, and Bruce recognized the place as the secret base where he, Alice, and Rose used to visit when they were children. Alice woke up to a slap from a man who she recognized as Tom, the thug who had tried to assault Rose years ago. Alice had been stabbed by Tom while saving Rose, almost dying. Tom told Alice, 3 years ago, "When you were in college, I was already out of prison. I was planning to assault you in a hotel, but that night, the billionaire David accidentally entered your room, and you ended up sleeping with him." Alice told Tom, "I'm David's woman now. If you dare to harm me, he won't let you off." Tom was scared, and Alice took the opportunity to escape. David arrived just in time. Tom swung a wooden stick at Alice, but David blocked it for her and kicked Tom hard. David tightly embraced Alice. Rose picked up the stick, but Bruce rushed over and stopped her, throwing her to the ground. Alice mentioned that night 3 years ago, and David remembered what had happened. He had been drugged and entered Alice's room, which was why they had slept together. He extended his hand to Alice, and when she hugged him, he lifted her with one arm and carried her away.